Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Graham Canals. I'm the Executive Director for CSAC. And I want to thank you for joining us for the virtual CSAC Institute. Today, we've been transforming over the course of the past couple of months, like many of you have, in terms of moving to a more virtual platform. So thank you for joining us on this journey. I want to thank you for your engagement with us. And also really want to thank you for your commitment to your own growth and success. It'll serve you well, it'll serve your county well, and certainly your community. Typically, introducing the course would be our Dean of 12 Years, Bill Shiatt. But as many of you know, he unexpectedly passed last week. So Bill is no longer with us. We just sent out a memoriam this afternoon. Bill, for those of you that don't know, is the originator of our CSAC Institute. 12 years ago, he and a handful of others sketched out the concept of it. It was Bill's vision. We're all here because of his great vision and leadership 12 years ago, and really want to appreciate that and recognize his really deep and broad legacy, because he's touched thousands of county leaders over the past 12 years. Certainly his legacy lives on. Our CSAC Institute, which literally started as one course, is now nearly 100. In a physical world, we have 5 different locations, and it's become the national model for leadership and professional development for counties, and that's all due to the incredible leadership of Bill Shiatt. So to start today's course, I'd like to take one moment of silence to honor the great work of our prior dean, Bill Shiatt. Thank you. This course, Adaptive Leadership, couldn't possibly be timed any better. We've all been immersed in an incredible amount of change and uncertainty, and there's more to come. Counties are adapting on a day-to-day basis without a pandemic and other things changing day to day, but we've been immersed in it for the past few months. And so today's about getting on the balcony, seeing a different perspective, and pivoting and finding a new pathway to move forward and be successful. And to guide us through that, we have one of our core longtime faculty members, Frank Benest, who's an expert in organizational leadership and improved decision-making, and is a marvelous guide. And so I'll hand it over to Frank, and he will navigate us through adaptive leadership today. Frank.
Great. Thank you, Graham. I would just like to say on behalf of everybody, Bill Shiatt was a very close colleague and great friend. As Graham mentioned, he was very much dedicated to the development of county leaders, and the CSAC Institute constitutes a part of his great legacy. As a consummate professional, Bill would have wanted us to conduct and move forward with the webinars on leading in crisis. So that's what we're going to do today. So let's begin. I've been in the trenches of local government for 36 years. Over time, the world of local government has gotten more uncertain, more disruptive, and messier. That's a technical term. A lot more messier. I'm going to start the program today with sharing a personal experience, and I'd like you to listen to the story, and then as I share it, I want you to sort of pull out what Frank learned from the experience and how I was able to adapt. And at the end of the story, I'm going to ask you to use the chat function, which you see at the bottom on most of your screens, I assume. And you can type in a lesson that I learned or something that allowed me to adapt. So several years ago, I thought I was doing a pretty good job of juggling a lot of balls in the air. I had my work, especially I was starting to build my training and consulting business. I had my family. I'm a single dad with 2 kids. At that point, they were fairly young kids. And I had my friends and other relationships. And I thought I was doing a pretty good job of juggling everything and having a pretty successful time at it. Then all of a sudden, I got hit by some unanticipated, non-linear change that shook my world. My house in Palo Alto burned to the ground. Now, my kids had grown up in that house. It's the only home they ever knew. And we lost everything, family photos, and particularly some of the vintage clothing from my late wife, Pam, that we were going to give to my daughter. But there was some good news. No one was hurt. We had insurance, and the insurance company moved us into an apartment, so we had a roof over our heads. In reflecting upon this experience, I was shook up, but my kids were really shaken up. So I had to be calm, steady, and optimistic for them. I also had to show that we were making progress towards a new stability, a new reality. We also found ourselves doing with less. My team, at that time, my daughter and I moved into a 2-bedroom, 1-bath bungalow. So we had to declutter, which we were able to do. I also had to deal with some new players over whom I had no authority and no experience: insurance adjusters, fire investigators, cost estimators, building contractors. So I had to develop new relationships and learn new stuff, and certainly cross boundaries into new worlds. In this difficult time, I reached out to family and friends and colleagues for support and advice, and they provided it. In my family, we had a lot of conversations with the kids about the fire and its aftermath. We now have a story about how we dealt with this adversity, and how we've moved on. Most importantly, I've had to focus on a new priority to stabilize our family, and to become a better father. So that's the fire story. So what I'd like you to do now is think about what did Frank learn from this experience, and why was I able to adapt and help my family adapt? And what we'd like you to do is to use the chat function and type in one lesson or one thing I was able to do to help myself and my family adapt. So let's see what we have. By the way, all of you are going to create a lot of the content today. Okay, so use support system. That's absolutely critical. Whenever we go through these transitions, sometimes very adverse situations, support system of colleagues, friends, families, coaches are very important. We'll talk about that. Being optimistic and steady, people will take their cues from you. And so I had to, as indicated here, I had to model optimism and steadiness and calmness. So that was very important, particularly for my kids. What else did I learn or was able to do to promote adaptability? Who else would like to type in something? Okay, let me share a couple, and perhaps as I do that, other people will type in some of the lessons I learned. First of all, there was new learning. If you frame adversity and uncertainty and difficult times as an opportunity to learn and grow. So I learned a whole bunch of stuff that I never knew anything about in terms of, again, dealing with cost estimators and fire inspectors and building contractors. And as if you frame it as learning, and you have a growth mindset about it, that will help you adapt. Another thing that helped me adapt was recognizing that conversation is key. Leadership is the art of conversation. And so I had conversations with all these people that were going to help me hopefully get through this experience. And we were able, with the kids, to create a new story. So whether you're a leader in your unit or your division, your department, the county organization, as you go through transition and adversity, you have to create a new story. And we created a new story for our family. We were not going to be in that old house that burned down anymore. We had a new place to live, and we created a new story about that. And then the final thing I want to mention is that people need to see progress. Teresa Amabile wrote a book called The Progress Principle, and people will stay self-motivated if they see progress. But if the whole journey is too long, they will lose motivation, self-motivation. So part of the leader's role, and in this case with my family, I had to show the kids that we were making progress as we transitioned into this new reality. So part of that leadership role is showing, hey, we've hit a new milestone. We were successful in that first several steps, and let's keep going. Okay, thank you. Let's, before we move on, I also want to mention that in an uncertain environment, you always start with the why. Purpose and meaning is a great motivator. So what's the big why behind our webinar today, our training session today? In a disruptive and messy world, we all face a lot of adversity and opportunities to learn and grow and adapt. It's an opportunity. So I just shared the story about my fire, so I'm going to ask you, you don't have to respond right now, but I want you to think about it. What's the fire in your professional or personal lives? And how do you navigate the transition and adapt and shape the change as it occurs? You cannot control everything, but you can shape this change as it occurs within your sphere of influence. Okay, let's go to the next slide. I'd like to start, before we launch into the material, with a quote to get us started. And of course, it's from Charles Darwin in The Origin of Species. And Darwin said, "It is neither the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, thank God, but the one most responsive to change." Next slide, please. Okay, let's get a feel for your new normal. So we're going to go to our first polling question. And Liz, you want to put up the polling question? There you go. You get to click all that apply. Working from home, using new technology, jumping from team to team to solve different kinds of problems, responding to new kinds of demand, crossing silos to solve problems. And of course, my favorite, learning to cut my own hair. Actually, my daughter, my young adult daughter is the one who's trimmed my hair, so I didn't have to learn that. Of course, I had to trust her. Okay, we're still getting a few answers. The top response in terms of this new normal, according to our poll here of all the participants from counties throughout California, is responding to new kinds of demands, whether it's police reform, homelessness, COVID-19 tracing, support for small businesses, and also that got high marks, jumping from team to team to solve different kinds of problems. And typically we're crossing boundaries to do that and forming these cross-silo, cross-disciplinary boundaries so that we can deal with a lot of adaptive challenges. So those are the top responses. Next slide, please. Okay, let's talk about our program today. It's going to be a quick-paced program. There'll be other polling questions. There's also going to be a breakout room, and you'll have a chance to respond and get engaged in a variety of ways. So we're going to be exploring the new normal and what it looks like, and what are some drivers of disruption. We're going to define adaptive change. What is it? We're going to focus in on what leadership looks like in an uncertain world. And we're not talking about management, we're talking about leadership. Leadership is all about exerting positive influence. It's not using your positional authority, it's about exerting positive influence, particularly through your relationships with others. We're going to discuss some approaches for leading others on your adaptive journey. Then we're going to talk about taking smart risks. You cannot adapt without taking some risks. However, you should focus, you should understand what is a smart risk. And I'm going to share, we're going to create some content, all of us together, about what are some smart risks. Then we'll have a chance for some Q&A at the end, and I'll share some resources before we adjourn. Next slide, please. Okay, so what are the drivers of disruption creating this new normal for all of us? So I'm going to identify some mega forces that are reshaping our world of local government and making it very messy, as you can see from this slide. That was not taken in my kitchen, but it's a very messy world. Next slide, please. So it's not just that we're confronted by a lot of change. It's not just the amount of change, but change is accelerating. It's getting faster and faster, and it's non-linear. We cannot anticipate the change. Obviously, you know, in one quarter, we had the pandemic, we had the fiscal crisis for counties and other local governments because of the shortfall of revenue coming in from the economy. And there were these demands for racial justice, including police reform. That was in nobody's work plan, any of these change efforts that we had to respond to. Nobody had budgeted for the pandemic. Nobody had budgeted for police reform. So it's the accelerating and non-linear nature of change. And then we are faced with permanent fiscal stress. Now, most of the time we focus on the cost side, which are basically employee-related costs, such as pension or healthcare costs. But I would also like to stress the revenue side. To fund local government services and infrastructure, we tax property, the transfer of property, as well as the value of property, and the sale of things. However, the majority of our gross national product, our GNP, is not related to property or the sale of things. It's related to services and the transfer of knowledge, which we do not directly tax. So we're taxing a smaller and smaller and smaller portion of the economy to support local government. And because of that, we're going to experience permanent fiscal stress even when we come out of this pandemic. To make matters worse, county government, city government, special districts, we have all these outdated structures and processes and rules. Let me just give you one example, job descriptions. I may need you to get out of your silo and work on a cross-cutting team to deal with one of these new challenges. And then I may need you to move to another cross-cutting team or cross-silo team. Your job description is completely obsolete in this new world. And so we have to shed some of these structures and processes and rules if we're going to adapt, particularly in a more agile way. Obviously, technology is transforming service delivery. People can report potholes and graffiti from their smartphone. And then, of course, they expect immediate response, immediate gratification, which, of course, is impossible to do. So people get very frustrated with us and websites that crash. We're facing a whole slew of demographic, generational, value, and political shifts. Baby boomers want to protect single-family residential neighborhoods, but millennials like my son, he likes high-density, vibrant urban spaces. And of course, in terms of political shifts, we're experiencing Black Lives Matter, which is a whole new political lens to see our reality. Next slide. Then we have the problems that are now thrown at us are increasingly complex. They're difficult to solve. They're emotion laden. They're divisive. So think about affordable housing, homelessness, opening up the economy in the midst of the pandemic. I mean, even wearing a mask is a divisive symbol for some people. And then power is diffuse. So in county government, a lot of these issues fall to us, yet we don't have the power, the authority to do much. About 15 years ago, I attended the annual conference of the International City County Management Association with a lot of city and county managers. And Jim Collins had just written this book, Good to Great, a fantastic book about how corporations get from good to great. And he gave a keynote address. And we cynical city and county managers, we said, we don't care how cities and corporations get from good to great. We want to know how city and counties get from good to great. And Jim Collins was smart enough to say, well, I don't know. So he sent his team off, and in a year he came back with this terrific little booklet, 35 pages. It's the greatest 35 pages you'll ever read. It's called Good to Great and the Social Sectors. And it's about how government, particularly local government, can get from good to great. And what he found was the defining trait of government, local government, is that everybody can say no. Everybody can veto you. Any group can block what you want to do, even if you're trying to do something very positive. So the leadership question has become, in this messy world, how do you get to yes when everybody can say no? Now that takes leadership. How do you get to yes when everybody can say no? And then no one institution can solve any one problem. So let's take the gang problem in the county. I could double the budget of the sheriff's department, and the sheriff's department can't solve the gang problem. The sheriff has to cross boundaries and engage schools and parent groups and youth groups, faith-based organizations. The sheriff cannot solve that problem. And when the sheriff crosses the boundary and gets out of his or her department, the sheriff has no power, no authority. And so it takes collaboration, again, in an environment where everybody can say no. And then finally, the last driver of disruption that I've indicated here is citizen mistrust. Now, citizens, we always complain that citizens mistrust government, but in fact, in America, citizens distrust everybody, every institution. So, I mean, who trusts Wall Street? Who trusts the media? We don't even trust organized religion. So at the very point that we need strong institutions to solve our problems, we have undercut our institutions because we don't give them credibility. Next slide. So we need adaptive leadership. So what is adaptive leadership? Let's define it. Adaptive leadership is the act of mobilizing a group or a bunch of individuals to take on a difficult challenge and emerge triumphant at the end of the process. It's about convening people. It's about starting conversations. Again, leadership is the art of conversation. It's about facilitating problem solving. It's about mobilizing action, again, in an environment where everybody can say no. That's adaptive leadership. Next slide, please. Now, in times of crisis, management needs to zoom in. We got to make sure we have staff working from home. We got to get staff away from these unhealthy environments. So a lot of staff are working from home. We have to ensure the safety, not just of staff, but of residents. We're arranging for Zoom meetings of our governing board. We're beefing up IT support. We're delivering services online. We're zooming in to take care of these urgent challenges, these urgent problems, and we need to act decisively. Now, next slide, please. We also have to, at the same time, we need to lead, not manage. Lead by zooming out. And as Graham said at the beginning, we got to get on the balcony, get off the dance floor where we can't discern any patterns or what's really happening. We have to get up higher, zoom out, and get up on the balcony. So we have to ask ourselves, particularly at a leadership level, what is the new future? Or as I like to say, what's the new story for our team, our department, our organization? What are our priorities? What are the services that we are going to provide? What are the services that we are not going to provide? Well, that's the tougher question. Where can we move to self-service? What can we digitize or automate? In what areas can we go to shared services with other organizations or regionalized services with other county governments? So we have to create this new future or new story, but then we have to ask what must come true for us to realize the new story. So what new technology do we need? What are some new ways of doing business? For example, electronic signatures is one example of that. What are some new partners? What are some new skills and competencies that we all need that we don't have? All of which are required if we're going to make the story come true, the new future. And the literature calls this future back thinking. You envision a new future, but then you have to think from that future back to the current situation and what do we need to make the story come true. Okay, let's go to our second polling question. Next slide, please. And then Liz, if you can put up the second polling question. Okay, so please respond to lead others in adapting. I am talking about purpose and values, engaging employees and stakeholders, starting a few experiments, helping others see progress, trying to get it roughly right, not perfect, focusing on learning, All of the above. Okay, in terms of approaches that we're using in helping ourselves and others adapt, clearly engaging employees and stakeholders to identify new solutions. The county cannot propose a new solution and get acceptance if our own employees and other stakeholders are engaged. Engagement is the key, and that includes connecting with others, starting conversations, convening people, brainstorming. But engagement is the key lever for leaders in adapting. Also, we focus on learning. We talked about learning. What are we learning? Well, we're learning an incredible amount of stuff as we go through these transitions. So 75% in terms of engagement, 60 in terms of focusing on learning, and then talking about purpose. Again, purpose is a key self-motivator for people. Everybody needs purpose and meaning. And then also having values guide change. And we're going to talk about that in a little while. And that was also close to 50%. Okay. Very good. So now let's transition and talk about some approaches. Next slide, please. Let's talk about some approaches for leading others. And I've identified 10 approaches for leading others on your adaptive journey. The first one is confront your fears. Everybody has fears. If you think you don't have fears and other people don't have fears, you're lying to yourself, or they're lying to you. We all have fears. Our fears could be, I may fail. People may not want to follow me. People may not like me. That's a big fear that I have, likability. Another fear is I may fail, or I may lose credibility in the process if I fail. So these are all fears, and you need to name the fear. Because undefined fear, if you don't name it, if you don't talk about it, undefined fear is the biggest obstacle in terms of leading, moving forward. You'll be completely overwhelmed with fear, and you won't be able to lead and to take action. Now, once you have identified your fear, whatever it is, you have to mine your experiences. In other words, think about your past professional or personal lives where you had an experience where you were able to act with courage in spite of your fears. Courageous people have fears, they confront their fears, and they act anyway. So if you think about a situation earlier in your professional or personal lives where you were able to act in spite of your fears, this will allow you to move forward if you reflect on these personal stories that will give you fortitude in terms of moving forward. Number two, again, emphasize the purpose of work and core values. Daniel Pink, in his book, Drive, identifies 3 self-motivate. I mean, leaders cannot motivate other people. Only the people themselves can motivate themselves. So what are the self-motivators? And number 1 is purpose and meaning. Now, think about our typical staff meeting, either in person or remotely. And we have a challenge, we bring the team together, and the first thing we do is we talk about what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Nobody talks about the purpose, the why. Always start with the why, so people can be imbued with a sense of purpose and deal with some of the adversity and challenges of the moment. And then you want to be guided by your core values. And you want to use your core values to guide your decision making. So that means you have to articulate your core values and make them transparent to everybody. So a core value could be health and safety comes first. It could be we're all in this together and there's no sacred cows in county government. It could be social justice matters. That could be a core value. Let me give you an experience from my tenure as a city manager. I was city manager of Palo Alto, and we were going through a desperate budget situation. And one of the budget proposals was to eliminate the custodians in City Hall, longtime custodians who were city employees. These were typically men and women of color. They were struggling working class folks. They had decent wage, but most importantly, they had benefits as city employees. And my values just would not allow me to say, yeah, let's outsource custodial work. And yes, we could save money by outsourcing custodial work, but I could not do that. So articulate your values and use them in a very transparent way as you discuss the decisions that you and the team must make. Number 3, connect with others. Again, when you're adapting, you cannot force people through your management authority, your positional authority, to adapt. People will adapt because they want to. So it's all about connecting with them. It's all about creating relationship with them. So that means you got to check in with team members, even if they're working remotely. Ask them about families, ask them about how their weekend went, get to know what they care about. Certainly express not only appreciation for the work they do, but also gratitude for what they bring to the team. And in these conversations, all about conversation, you want to talk less and listen more. And talking less and listening creates connection. Number 4, be clear about goals. So, what are the goals? Let's be clear about them. Is it protecting health and safety? Is it about helping small businesses? What are the goals that you have to be very clear about priority and about goals because everything is up in the air. And then number 5, very importantly, do something. There should be a bias for action. Now, the wonderful thing about the pandemic, it created this sense of urgency that allowed us to do stuff. So the question you have to ask yourself is, what is one small, hopefully bold, next step forward? That's all you can do. It's an uncertain world. What's one bold step forward? And then you have to be prepared to pivot. Graham mentioned pivoting. Be prepared to pivot and then fix it up as you go along. You don't know what the journey is until you start it. So be ready to fix it up as you go along and be ready to pivot. And then one of my favorite quotes from Dan Rockwell from the blog Leadership Freak: the path forward emerges as you move forward, not before. So taking action creates clarity. Next slide, please. Okay. You need, as we talked about in the polling, you need to engage others, employees and stakeholders. And in the process, you leverage the collective intelligence of everybody. So in doing that, you must acknowledge that you don't have all the answers. So you ask for help. You want to crowdsource creative ideas from everybody. For instance, how do we redeploy staff to support nonprofits or to support small businesses? What do we eliminate in the short term or medium term? What administrative duties and reporting add little value and can be ignored or minimized as we deal with the pandemic? So you need to leverage the collective intelligence. You need to acknowledge that you don't know everything, but you need to engage people in that process. Number 7 is seek opportunity. Of course, in a crisis, there's plenty of opportunity. Again, eliminating non-value added activities. I'll give you one of my favorites. You may not agree, but the annual performance review. That's a god-awful experience that sucks up all these hours of staff time, both staff time and management time. And certainly it's not adding much value. Can we streamline contracting and procurement? Can we create new partnerships with adjacent counties? So what are the opportunities? Number 8 is communicate with confidence, even though there's a lot of uncertainty. You need to share the ugly truth about the situation. People want to know the truth. So you got to share the ugly truth, but also spread optimism at the same time. So tell people what you know and tell people what you don't know. And then identify again, 1 or 2 steps forward. People want you to be decisive and point to a step or 2 forward. Now, the Swedes have a wonderful saying, a wonderful phrase, ice in the belly, ice in the belly. So in a situation of distress, people need calm and steady leaders who take action and have ice in the belly. Number 9 is learn as you go. So you want to debrief everything with your team. What's working, what's not working so well, and what do we learn as we continue on the adaptive journey? And then show progress. Again, people will stay motivated if you show progress because these journeys are very long. Somebody asked under chat, somebody answered, ice in the belly. Okay, let's go to the next slide, please. Okay, we're gonna do, you guys are now gonna create some content. As we talked about earlier, you gotta take some risks. There is no way in the world that you can adapt in this uncertain world and make a positive difference if you're not taking some risks. Now, you want to take some smart risks. So in your breakout rooms, and we're going to form breakout rooms of 3, so you'll be with 2 other people. All 3 of you are going to identify in your personal or professional life what was one risk that was worth taking. You got married, you got divorced, you took a new job, you switched careers, you took on a new personal growth challenge. So one risk that was worth challenging, and then once you identify that one risk, I want you to identify 1 or 2 things that you did so that you were able to pull it off. What did you do so you were successful in pulling it off? Like switching careers or switching jobs. What did you do so you were able to successfully take that risk? So in a moment, we're going to go to breakout rooms of 3. Each of you will share the one risk that was worth taking and one or two things that you did so you were able to pull it off. And we're going to give you about 13, 14 minutes to do that. We're going to let you know when there's 2 minutes and then 1 minute left. So you know when to wrap it up. And then once you get back into the large group that we're all in right now, I'm going to ask one person from the group, the person with the last name, with the letter, starting with the letter that's closest to A. So the person in the trio that has a last name starting with a letter closest to A will then, once we get back to the large group, use the chat function to type in what are 1 or 2 things that people used to pull it off. So introduce yourself once you get into the breakout rooms and then share. and then we'll let you know when we're coming back into the large group, and then we'll share our information. So Liz will now get us into the groups. Okay, so what we want you to do is we want the person in your group with the last name that starts with a letter closest to A to be the reporter from your group. And we want you to use the chat function. And we want you to identify one or two things that were identified in your group that helped you pull off this risky move or change in your life. So let's do that now, please. So one, community involvement and facing our fears. Confronting fears, taking action. The key is take action, do something. And then of course, making sure you communicate with everybody. Asking support from your network. Creating backup plans. Yeah, that's very important. Contingency plans, because you're going to need to pivot. Collaboration, changing our mindset, focusing on goals, remaining calm. You cannot stress that enough, because people take their cues from you as a leader. All of you are leaders, regardless of your official position. People will take their cues from you. So if you can remain calm and steady, you can help other people adapt. Okay. Maintaining a positive attitude. Now, somebody mentioned here forecasting the future. You can create a forecast for the future. You can envision a future, a new story. But again, you need, because it's an uncertain journey, you can know the destination. I'm sorry. You can know the general direction, but not the destination. So you have to be open to the twists and the turns, even if you're forecasting. Okay. A lot of people change careers or changed, yeah. Courage, thinking, what do I have to lose? That's a good one. What I have to lose. My mother always said, my mother Rosie said, Frank, what's the worst that can happen? And can you live with it? So that gives us courage. Okay. Pushing through adversity. Yeah, don't cave just because there's pushback. Okay. Take action, be flexible. Very good. Okay, thank you very much for sharing. I hope you had some good discussion in your breakout rooms. All of these help. There's not one way, but there's many ways of overcoming risks. And of course, a lot of our local governments, including county government, is risk averse. So if you're going to make a difference, particularly in an uncertain world, you have to figure out how to navigate that situation and use several approaches for dealing with risk-taking so that you can, in fact, help the organization adapt and the community. So let's go to our next slide. So again, you got to take some risks. You have no choice. So you want to take some smart risks. So number one, and I think this is very important, consider risks only if they are important to you and are aligned with your passion. For instance, those of you who said, I changed careers, you took a big risk because that new opportunity was an opportunity for you to do something that you were passionate about. Now, for me, as a chief executive, if it involved social justice, which is a passion of mine, I was willing to take a risk. If it involved IT, which is cool, but doesn't excite me, I was not willing to take a big risk. Other people took big risks with IT, not me, because IT is not aligned with my passion. So you have to know yourself, be self-reflective, and understand what your values and passions are, so you know where to take some smart risks and where not to take some smart risks. Number two, calculate the cost of doing nothing, the status quo option. We often cost out a new proposal, a new idea, a new innovation, but not the cost of doing nothing. For instance, what is the cost of letting homeless encampments multiply in our county? Well, the cost is immense. So we have to cost that out, the cost of doing nothing, and then compare it to the cost of doing something. Number three, ready, fire, aim. You want to get it roughly right, not perfect. When in an environment of uncertainty, you don't want to go for perfect. You want to go for roughly right. So you take a step or two, you fix it up, you pivot. That's a wonderful image we keep repeating, pivoting. When you encounter something, you pivot. Number four, use a respected sponsor. Sometimes even though we want to play hero or we're very energized by an idea, we tend to be the visible one pushing the idea. And sometimes that's not a good idea. What we want to find is a respected sponsor who has influence in the organization or in the community. So it could be the sheriff or the planning director or a downtown business person or a school superintendent or a neighborhood leader. Who is the best person to front the idea? You're always asking yourself, who is the best person to front the idea and help us adapt? Number five, spread the risk by engaging partners and allies. Now, if you're proactively trying to help the organization or the community adapt, there's going to be people who will be opposed. Again, it's people who can block you, who can veto you. So you want to engage partners and allies, and they're very important to add ideas to the mix, again, to crowdsource, or also to provide resources. But the other thing about engaging stakeholders and having them become partners and allies is that they spread the risk. So if you get in front of the board and somebody's taking a pot shot at you, it's harder to take a pot shot at you if you're standing shoulder to shoulder with allies and partners. So you want to spread the risk. Number six, you have to understand what are some ongoing initiatives or investments that are already underway. So let's say the board has a climate protection priority or an economic vitality agenda at your governing board level. Therefore, you want to tie your clean energy project to either that climate protection initiative or that economic vitality agenda. And once you tie it to this larger initiative, it will tend to get more support. Number seven is pilot everything. People have less fear if it's an experiment, if you frame something as an experiment or as a pilot. People are always more open to an experiment. And please call it a pilot, even if it's not a pilot. Call it a pilot, even if it's not a pilot. Number eight is take incremental steps and ramp it up over time. There's a great book called Little Bets by Peter Sims. I'll give it to you in the resources. And you take these little bets, you see what the reaction is, then you ramp it up over time. The other thing about little bets are that they are reversible. So let's say there is a wave of opposition, not just some opposition, but You're always going to get opposition. But a wave of opposition, a little bit, is reversible without damage happening to you or your unit. Number 9, debrief everything as you go along with your team, with your department, with the larger team. Again, the 3 questions when you debrief: what is going well? Number 2, what is not going well? And number 3, what are we learning for future practice as we continue to adapt? And then seek guidance from your dream team. Everybody needs a dream team of advisors and coaches. So you need more than one coach. So you need a coach for career development to advance your career. You need a different coach to help you deal, let's say, with a problematic work situation or a conflict. You also need a coach to give you political guidance. So you need to form a dream team of advisors. And we'll talk about where to find coaches under resources in a few moments. So those are 10 approaches for taking smart risks. You got to take some risks. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, we're at Q&A. We have some time for Q&A. Okay.
Bob from San Bernardino.
Yeah, hi. Thanks. Frank, one of the things I was curious about is, as a leader during this pandemic and crisis, it's been important for me to be calm, to show confidence for my staff, and help them work through things, in the little increments as you talked about. But one of the things I'm not really good at, and I didn't really hear you talk about too much, is that, and from other classes I've taken before through CSAC, I know that there's an element of mourning when you go through change.
Yes.
And I don't make, that's something I've always had a hard time to do, is to find time for myself to mourn away from work and away from the people in my life.
Right.
So that I can continue to show that kind of brave face. And I didn't know what your thoughts were on how a leader can find time and what's the best approach for mourning these changes that you're helping to lead people through.
Very good. First of all, you need time for self-reflection. When I was a city manager, I made sure every Friday I would take a few hours and go to a cafe. That was just part of my ritual. And I would spend some time, drinking coffee, making some notes, thinking about what I'm doing, creating an agenda for moving forward, and just being self-reflective. So I understood that, man, this is hard. This is difficult. We're facing a lot of adversity. I'm feeling bad about where we were, that we're going to have to leave where we were and go forward. So that's number 1, self-reflection and carving out time for self-reflection. Number 2, I think it's very important not only to have some peers who you feel comfortable with sharing, but also some coaches. And I'm going to suggest there are 200 coaches that have already signed up through the ICMA coaching program who've already said, I'll be your coach, and people can help you through that. And then finally, yes, you're mourning loss, you're grieving loss, but you also see the opportunity for doing good things and great things, given the circumstances. So yeah, spend a little time grieving, but really begin to focus, not just with your team, but also you personally, on the opportunity that the crisis provides.
Thank you.
Paya?
Hi there, thank you. Frank, do you have any thoughts or resources for keeping up care and maintenance of your team when they've gone remote? As far as being a leader, keeping the team together, keeping people motivated, keeping them in touch with each other. I'm finding that it seems like a totally different universe.
Right. Well, first of all, several things we mentioned today, which are important, is showing progress. Every time the team hits a milestone or takes a step forward, show progress, talk about progress. And then number 2, carve out time for celebration. We are terrible in local government at
Yeah.
celebrating. So celebrate progress, celebrate success. And I would suggest celebrate everything. Somebody has finished a course, completed a course, somebody wrote an article, somebody just had a birthday, celebrate. And then the other thing I would suggest is some organizations, before they start a meeting, they have a segment, it's called Take Five. Take Five is an opportunity for the team just to share what they did on the weekend, what their sports team did, they won, they lost, what their teen daughter said at the breakfast table. It's Take Five. And that's the first thing on the agenda, Take Five. I wrote a career compass column, and I'll mention that, the career compass columns, as part of the ICMA coaching program. And one of the latest columns, there's 85 of them, I believe, is how to connect, leading through connecting, leading by connecting, I think it's called. And it has a bunch of suggestions about how you connect, because it's through connection that we lead.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Looks like there are one more. Melody?
Hi, Frank. You're getting two people asking questions from Santa Cruz today. So some of the bigger changes that are going out there in the world are things that are going to involve massive culture change. For example, this push to quote unquote defund sheriff's departments or police departments is about how do we use our resources differently to address things that we now use cops to address? How do we use mental health professionals or social workers instead of cops to go deal with some of these things? How can we push that bigger agenda while still focusing on, like, all of the things that you're talking about, taking small bets and doing things, piloting and doing it in this small incremental way, but still keeping that bigger picture of kind of massive social change in mind?
Right. Well, in terms of decoupling police from other services, which I think makes a lot of sense, and is, first of all, let's do a pilot. You need to show people that you heard them and you took people seriously and you're willing to try something. So let's try something. You need to, while you're going to learn as you go, you do need to do some research. And of course, there are cities and counties that have begun to use mental health professionals and other civilians in terms of responding to homelessness and mental health and substance abuse problems. I think the teaming police or a sheriff's deputy with a mental health professional on some of these calls is a good way of taking a little bet. So I think, first of all, police, sheriffs, they're demoralized. So the big role of leaders is to show that you understand how difficult it is for the sheriffs or the police, to show that you support them. And it's not an or, it's an and we need to consider some of these ideas given what's happening in our community and given some of the demands that people are making and what we see happening nationally. And if we don't take some of these steps, other people are going to be making decisions for us. So this is an opportunity for helping us shape the change as it occurs. And that's what you want to do when you try to adapt, is shape the change as it occurs. I think there's a great opportunity here. We really need some great adaptive leadership to help navigate, this Black Lives Matter era and move our law enforcement in a productive way that will serve law enforcement. This is a great opportunity for law enforcement to focus on things that we really need law enforcement to do, and to shed them of certain activities which they're not equipped to deal with, and they don't do very well.
Thank you.
It's a tough leadership challenge. Okay, I want to share some resources. Now, a couple of the resources I mentioned are not on this sheet, but I did mention Jim Collins and his little pamphlet, Good to Great and the Social Sectors. And I also mentioned Teresa Amabile, Amabile, The Progress Principle. Now, in addition to that, Peter Sims wrote this great book called Little Bets, How Breakthrough Ideas Emerge from Small Discoveries. So again, take little bets, small experiments. And then for the ICMA coaching program, ICMA again is the International City County Management Association. I wrote a column a couple of months ago, We Need Adaptive Leaders Now. There's another column called Taking Smart Risks, and Leadership is the Art of Conversation. Leadership is more about asking questions than providing answers. And then the CSAC tip sheets that are on the CSAC Institute website under COVID-19 resources, 2 tip sheets, Building Around Purpose and Courage in Risk-Taking. In your packet, your PDF that you got when you registered, or I think you got it today, but it's also on the website, posted under this webinar under COVID-19, is the ICMA coaching program. This is the go-to employee development, professional development, learning resource, in addition to the CSAC Institute. The ICMA coaching program is a partner with the CSAC Institute. You get 6 live webinars every year. And again, it's free, and you can participate individually at your PC like you're doing now, but also it's good to participate as a team, whether you're remote or not. So participate as a team, particularly when you get back to work. The next live webinar is September 9th, called Managing Hostility in Public Discourse, which of course is a big issue, living in the age of anger. In addition to the 6 live webinars, there are 75 webinars that are posted on the archives at icma.org/coaching. So if you ever want a free training session with a packet of resources for your team, pull it down, it's on demand, and you have a free training workshop using the webinar. We also have one-to-one coaching, and this is creating a dream team. Everybody needs a dream team of coaches. So you can go to Coach Connect, which is a registry of one-to-one coaches. There are 200 coaches, I believe, that are registered. And the coaches are city and county managers, department heads, other senior leaders who have already agreed to be your coach. All you got to do is send them an email or send them a message through Coach Connect. And it could be a one-time conversation, it could be a periodic conversation, or it can be an ongoing relationship. You can do it via phone, or you can do it in person. We also have new training videos on how to benefit from coaching, how to be a coach, how to serve as a coach, and also a training video demonstrating a coaching conversation. And then finally, the Career Compass advice columns, which I write on career development and leadership topics. There are, again, 85 of these posted at icma.org/coaching. If you want to receive the Career Compass columns directly to your inbox, send me an email at frank@frankbenest.com, which I believe is listed on the title page of the PowerPoint. And I will send you a link so that you can receive the Career Compass columns once a month directly to your inbox. So the coaching program is a go-to professional development training resource for you in terms of your development, but also for all your staff. It's absolutely free. You don't have to be a member of ICMA, and it's a resource that is provided in partnership with the CSAC Institute. Okay, next slide, please. Now, you've just wasted 90 minutes of your life unless you're going to do one thing differently as a result of this training session that we've just had today online. So I'd like you to write down, we're not going to share it, but I want you to write it down someplace to try out one thing. So to serve as a better adaptive leader, what is one thing I want to start doing tomorrow? So take out a pen, please write down someplace where you're taking some notes. What is one thing I want to start doing tomorrow? Just one thing, one commitment. Okay, let's go to the next slide. We're going to end with a quote. This is from Alvin Toffler, the futurist. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read or write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I want to really emphasize this unlearn piece. As we try to adapt, we have to unlearn and relearn. Next slide, please. Here's my website. Again, I believe on the cover slide, the title slide to the webinar, you have my, yes, you have my email address if you'd like to request the link to get the Career Compass columns directly to your inbox. The next CSAC Institute webinar is scheduled for next Thursday, July 23, and it's called Living and Leading in Chaotic Times. I keep involved with the CSAC Institute, keep involved in ICMA, in the ICMA coaching program. Good luck on your adaptive journey. And it's been a real joy. Thank you very much.